If you've decided that this is the year you're finally going to take your brand from poor performer to power brand, then this is the episode for you. Today, brand value is one of the most valuable assets a company can have. For many, it's proving to be their only asset. Yet most companies don't really know how to build a high-value brand. Others simply don't see brand building as a long-term investment. The few who have strategically and often painstakingly invested in building a brand have reaped the rewards. From Apple with its trillion-dollar valuation to Coca-Cola, the godfather of global brands, and including everything from luxury goods to packaged goods, from technology to manufacturing, the few companies who get brand right enjoy a massive payoff. I'm Jane Singer, and welcome to A Seat at the Table. If you want to understand how to build a power brand, then my guest today is the man to see. Marty Neumeier is a best-selling author and director of CEO branding at Liquid Agency. He's one of the few people who can boast that Steve Jobs not only read one of his books, but found it so valuable that he wrote his name, Steve Jobs, on the cover, along with the warning, "Hands off." I'll put a link in the show notes so you can see a photo of this legendary book with Steve's writing. Marty has decades of experience helping companies, in addition to Apple, create brands that are built to last. Before we get started, if you're looking to develop knitwear collections that are on brand and meet consumer demand, then Spin Expo is the place to go. It's the primary exhibition for yarns and knitwear. Spin Expo provides well-edited forums featuring top-quality products that are filled with creativity. To learn more, go to spinexpo.com. That's spinexpo.com. You can also find a link in the show notes for this episode. Now get ready to hear Marty discuss how to build your brand into a profitable market leader. Marty, thanks for joining us today. I've been following your work for several years now and your visionary approach to brand building, which I think you've been evolving for nearly 2 decades.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, since exactly 2 decades.
Since Steve Jobs got his hands on your Brand Gap book and put his name on it.
Yeah, that was a surprise. Since Steve and I don't think he really remembered who I was because we did not hit it off when we met.
I think that was the case with him and a few other people as well.
I think a lot of people had that same experience, and I'm not that hard to get along with, but something didn't go well with that connection, and I can tell you about that. It's probably off topic, but what an interesting guy, and what a favor he did for everybody in the world of design and branding.
Oh, absolutely. A company that is his legacy just seems to go from strength to strength.
Yeah. They've been doing a good job of keeping it going, I have to say. I'm noticing fewer innovations, fewer new bold moves, which could be just a sign of maturity. When you get to a certain size, it doesn't pay. But at the same time, I think if Steve were there, he'd be blasting through some new barriers. He's one of a kind, and I think there'll be more people like him in the future when business people digest what he's done. When they figure it out, when they see how he did it, it'll start to enter the mythology of business. And right now, he's just an outlier. People don't know how he did it. But if you're a designer, you know exactly how he did it. He's designed for all it was worth.
Oh, absolutely. If we're looking more at brands that might be a little more mainstream than Apple, for top brands, maybe not as bold as Apple, but certainly out of the box, a lot more risk-taking. How should companies be approaching building their brands these days?
I think the biggest hurdle is the mindset of what a brand is, because they still think of branding as something that, that they do. We control the branding. We brand our stuff. We brand our company. We brand our products. And it's not a very helpful way to think about it, because if you think about what a brand really is, it's a person's gut feeling about a company or a product or service. It's in the minds and the hearts of customers mostly, but anybody who comes in contact with it will have a perception of it, and it'll be an incomplete perception. It'll be they'll have a view of it, and that view may change over time, but that's the brand. And everyone has a different brand of your company or your product. They create it in their heads using the raw materials that you give them. So what are those? Well, products and services and communications about those things, behaviors, messages, all those kinds of things help people form an impression of who you are, and that impression is the brand. So the reason I like to look at it like that is because then you're working with the real stuff of branding. The real stuff is people's perceptions. It's in their heads, and you have to know what that is, and you have to work with them, right? You have to lead them in a way that is good for their lives and good for the company, and with any luck, good for society in general. Those are the kinds of things you're trying to control. But if you just look at branding as, oh, it's logos and advertising and messages, check all the boxes. Oh, good, we're doing branding. We're doing branding, but you probably don't know what you're doing. It's all about not what you send out. It's what they receive.
So essentially, what you're trying to do, ideally through branding, is to create that reaction in the minds or in the hearts of the person who is seeing your product or the message you're putting out about your product, how they're experiencing it, and then what that means to them.
And also hearing about it from their friends and colleagues and so forth, which has a big effect on how you think about a brand, is how other people think about it. We're so subject to the sort of herd mentality of, hey, all the cool people are doing X, so they're all buying apples. Ooh, I got to get an apple. That's a very powerful pull on people. And so you have to pay attention to not only individual customers, but sort of the tribe, the customer tribe. And I think the simplest way to work with a tribe is to find one and serve it, and then become part of it. And that's your tribe. And those people will probably buy your products for the rest of their lives if you do a good job.
In this day and age when people tend to be focusing more on individuality, are tribes as strong? Previously, we went through, I would say, easily 2 decades where if someone had it, especially a celebrity or, like you said, the cool kid or whatever, everybody else had to have it. And now we've seen a general shift towards people wanting something more personalized, more unique.
People want to be unique, but they want to be unique in groups. And they want to be seen by that group as being unique, or somehow uniqueness is the right flavor for that group. We really are community-based people, and I think that's actually the big story, not individualist nature that we also have. I think it's the understanding that people behave in certain ways that tribes circumscribe. And when you get in with the tribe, feels good, and you want to be in favor with the rest of the tribe, and you feel at home there. These are my people kind of things. And it's not always a good thing. We've seen in politics what tribalism can do, but it's reality. It's human nature. You have to start with human nature. And so circle back to your question of what should companies be focusing on. They should focus on customers first, and they should make sure that they are making customers' lives better. And that's the first thing they should do, not figure out how they're going to make a profit. And so if you start with, where's the money coming from? You'll probably get some money. But I don't know if you necessarily build a tribe that lasts a long time and is all in for you. So I think that's the first thing. And that doesn't sort with business education. It's all about what we do as a company, not the stuff that we do for our customers. And so that's the big revolution, is understanding customers and the groups that they form and serving them in ways that are mutually beneficial.
It's interesting because I think that when I think of examples, the companies that for whatever reason have had the luxury, so to speak, of being able to invest in, as you said, identifying a specific customer base, serving that customer really well, ended up making a lot more money in the long run and having a very loyal following. I think it's hard to do because you have to obviously have the funds to be able to do that and be able to have the autonomy to do. But you're right. When I think about examples, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, you said the right thing. It's the long run. Branding is all about the long run. It's about investing for the future as well as the present, because the strong brand definitely supports sales and marketing tactics in the present. But it's an investment for the future, and the idea is to bring stability to the brand or to the company, so that customers can last pretty long, and they can be loyal for the rest of their lives. But brands, because brands are concepts and brand is a reputation, can outlast the customers. It can last generations, and that really gives a company strength. So that's what branding is about. It's about building a stronger company, and a company that can be agile and strong enough to withstand competition and mistakes, because companies make mistakes. If Apple makes a mistake and they quickly apologize and fix it, that's not going to hurt them. Their tribe is going to say, wow, aren't they great for recognizing that? And because they apologize, now you really feel closer to them. They're human. Oh, God, that's great. It's companies that never apologize and just appear to be thinking of themselves first that don't do very well these days, because we all have visibility into these companies thanks to the internet. We know who the leaders are. We know what their policies are. And that'll either work for you or against you. And there's some companies now that are really in trouble because people know who the leadership is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's interesting because you're known as a visionary brand builder, and yet from reading some of your books and articles, you go well beyond traditional brand building, and you really seem to get into the product development side of things. Most brand agencies take an existing product and, in a sense, you could say create a brand, so to speak, or an image on top of it. Can you share your approach, something which you have referred to as agile strategy?
You make a good point. So traditional branding is about surfaces. It's about the look and feel or the surface understanding of something. An advertising agency in the old days would just come along and take whatever existed, try to understand the customers, and then create some messages to make it look better than it is. In some cases, just as good as it is. But the main thing is it's cosmetic, right? Because that's all, they don't have control over anything else. And the company at this point is not interested in redesigning their products. They have the products. So it's this kind of linear progression where, the person that says, we got to make more widgets. And then the guy says, okay, widget machine, get going. And then okay, now we've got to sell these widgets. Okay, sales team, marketers, get in, branders, get involved. And so the people doing the brand work can't push back. Everything's been decided for them, what the product is, what the strategy is, all that. All they can do is execute on something that may be suboptimal. And interestingly, people who do the work of selling, advertising agencies and designers and so forth, are closer to customers than the leadership of the companies. They actually know what will work and what won't, but they have no control over the big things, what the products are, for example,
right,
or the behaviors of the company. They can't affect that. So agile strategy is, first of all, it's based on the idea that there's very little difference between business strategy and brand strategy these days. If a business strategy isn't based on building a brand, it's probably not going to be a successful strategy. Branding is about customers. If you don't include customers in your plan, it's not much of a plan. So brand strategy and business strategy is really the same. The two layers of the same thing. They address slightly different things, but they need to be perfectly in alignment. The problem with strategy is it can take a long time to shift a strategy or to create a strategy. It can take 18 months for a big company to look at their situation and then make a bold move into some other area or in a different direction. And usually that's because of the way they go about it. It's because they're doing it in a linear fashion. So, like I said, since somebody at the top says our stock price is suffering, we need to get in gear and do something. We need some organic growth. We're going to create some more products or something. And maybe the people at the top are not very imaginative, and they just see what other companies are doing, and they say, "Look at that! Look at those guys. That's really successful. We need to go over in that direction."
Right.
It's like watching people fish, and they're like, "Hey, they're catching fish over there. Row over there right now." And then you row over there, and there's no fish left. It's cumbersome, and by the time you get to the end of that linear process, the result doesn't even match the original goals half the time. So what agile strategy is about is not doing your strategy in a linear way, but doing it in an all-at-once way, where everybody's working together at the same time with incomplete information so that it stays liquid while you're in this process, and everybody has an equal voice in the big ideas of the strategy.
I noticed that you also recommend bringing in people from many different departments, not just the marketing department.
Yeah, I think everybody who's going to be affected, all the senior people who are going to be affected by the strategy need to be in that conversation. No excuses. They have to be. And absolutely, the CEO or the head of the company needs to be involved in these. Maybe not every minute but every day as to check in. We call this process, and that's a term that comes from the military. Swarming is what all the generals do, the leaders of the military, when there's an emergency. They get together and there's no time to do a lot of research. They know what they know already. They have to make decisions on the fly with less than complete information. And they put their heads together and they come to make a decision. All hands on deck. That's really what this is about. It doesn't have to be frantic, and it doesn't have to be done in a short amount of time. But the main thing is that it's done in an all-at-once format rather than a linear format. So what you do is you get the CEO, the CMO, all the C-level people. You get whoever's consulting with the company to help lead this. So in my book, Scramble, that's the situation that I bring out because it's a rather common one. So there's a catalyst, a company that comes in from the outside that has some frameworks for working together, and they lead the group through all these frameworks, and at the end, they make a decision. And so the way this would work is in our company, we've been pioneering this for a while, Liquid Agency. We do a little bit of work up front. We'll do some market research, customer research. We'll do interviews with key executives to find out what their temperatures are about this and what their views are before we start. But then when we get enough information, we all get in a room together, probably for a week, every day, all day, and we work through strategy, like the concepts of what could this be, who are we, what do we do, why does it matter, these sorts of things, and come to some sort of mutual idea of what the company could be, and then try it out with actual prototypes. Design some stuff, design a product, design a speech by the CEO, whatever the key touch points are, the main sort of elements that bring out this new approach. Make prototypes of those so everybody can see how this could turn out. Because often what happens is companies will come up with a strategy on paper, and then when they go to execute it, the people executing it just can't do anything with it. It's too boring, or it's just doesn't give them the insights they need. And so they're just basically polishing and making it look cool on the outside, but it doesn't really have much. So in this situation where everybody's in the room together, designers are there too. The people actually speaking with customers, salespeople are there, and they have a voice in this. And they can say, I once had a customer and I told him X, and he just went, oh my God, this is where have you been all my life? And we never even talk about that. Okay, so that kind of information is really important. And then you get something like that and everybody goes, that's true, I had the same experience. Let's work on that. Let's see what we can build out of that. And so in this sort of frantic, chaotic week, you toss around an idea and a bunch of ideas, and it comes to a head with one idea that all works together. And it's not, the execution is half done. What's going to work? You've seen it. You've probably even tested it a little bit by the end of the week to see how it goes over. And now there's no internal selling to do. Go back to the CEO and say, hey, we've got this idea, boss. Oh, no, I don't like that at all. That's way different than what we're doing. No, we can't do that. That's the end of that. So the boss is there. Everybody's there. They've all had a hand in it. They can see how it's going to work. They can even see evidence on paper or as a prototype of a product or whatever. And then they can go forward and with confidence because they know that this is probably going to work. So if a bold idea is not tested, it's going to get shrunk down to something that people feel confident in, something they've seen before. The swarming process allows bold ideas to come out because everything is tested. Nothing, doesn't matter how crazy it seems at the time. If it works, that's even better. You've got a crazy idea that works. What can be better than that? All the best companies are built on some crazy idea that worked instead of a crazy idea that failed. You won't do that. Decision makers won't do that unless they can have some assurance that they're not going to totally fall on their faces. So that's what this does.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because there's two key things in there. First, that you have everyone together. So like you said, you have buy-in right from the beginning. You're not having to spend all the time developing something only to then have to spend even more time trying to get buy-in from this one, from that one, and then modify things after the fact, so to speak. But I think what's also really important and what so many companies overlook, and that's that sort of bottom-up approach, which is starting or at least including what your customers are saying they want or what they're complaining about that they don't like about your product, or as you said, what they wish you were doing and so forth. I think that's something that very few companies actually implement. Maybe talk about, but not really implement.
Yeah, very few do. My books are always set 5 years in the future, 10 years in the future. I don't want to talk about what is. I want to talk about what will be. And so I'm trying to look around corners, and I see evidence of companies trying to do this. And if it totally makes sense, then I want to talk about it because that's probably where we're going to end up going. So I don't see my role as just documenting the way things are right now. There are plenty of people do that.
Right.
I see things all the time, these big companies like Accenture talking about how brand experience is going to be the next big thing in companies. I've been talking about that for 20 years. Why would I want to do that? So they're 20 years behind the times. And the same thing is happening in business schools. They're always 10, 20 years behind teaching what's already known and proven. And I question the sense in that. Like, what's the point of that? It's a competitive world. You need to get a jump on people. You need to see the ideas before anybody else does.
I guess from their point of view, it's safe, just in the same way as you said, brands will copy other brands because they figure if it looks like it's working for somebody else, it's better to follow what looks like it's working than to try and look at what our customers want and create something and take a chance.
Yeah, that's right. It seems safer, but it's not, because it's the path to commoditization.
Exactly.
And low profit margins.
Exactly. And I think that's the position that I don't want to say most brands, but probably pretty close to most brands find themselves in these days, is commoditization, razor thin margins, living from quarter to quarter.
Yeah, the business case for branding is that it lets you sell more things to more people for more years at a higher price. So if you find yourself lowering your price to be competitive, that says that's a tax on branding.
Right.
Your brands aren't strong enough. You need to make your brand stronger and probably more original and fresh and differentiated. Difference is hard for companies, just for that very reason you said, is that people want to do what other people are doing to feel safe. But that's not where success lies. Success lies in the direction of being different and compelling.
Well, that's what you were pointing out when you said you need to zag when other people zig. Have I got that correct? Or was it the other way?
When everybody zigzag.
Yeah.
It works. Just don't do what everybody else is doing. A hard thing to do, and you do have to prove that you're right when you do something different. This whole movement of design thinking is all about that. Traditional business thinking has two steps. Something because you had it in a case study, or you did it in your last company, or you read an article in Forbes about it, or something. You think of something, and you want to move directly from knowing to doing. Let's just get the show on the road. Let's just do it. But we're not going to do anything too dangerous or too crazy, because what if it goes wrong, right? So that just rules out innovation right there. Innovation is a maneuver that changes your industry, a real innovation. But if you're afraid to do that, you're just not going to ever get there. So that's where some smart people came along in the last 50 years or so and said, you just have to prototype things. You have to use design thinking. And what that is, adding a step in the middle, which we could call making. So you know something, or you think something, you imagine something that wasn't on the table already, use your imagination, and you prototype it. That's making. You test the prototype. And if it leads to some great insights about what's possible, that changes doing. So it pushes back on because now it's something different. And it also changes doing. Without that step, you're just going to be very cautious about doing anything different is suspect unless you can prove it in some way. And so design thinking allows you to prove it, at least half prove it. You get some sense of whether this is going to fly by testing prototypes with the actual audience.
Wow, really interesting. Do you see many companies utilizing that, or is it still pretty much in the theoretical? There's
a lot of lip service, but a lot of companies are doing it, and I think they're doing it around the edges. Some talk a lot about it. It's one of those things that can easily turn into a catchphrase and nothing more.
Right.
But it doesn't mean it's going to go away because it's solid. It's just the way any innovator works. And it goes back to Leonardo da Vinci did that. Shakespeare was a design thinker. Shakespeare didn't just write a play and then put it on. He tested it. He prototyped it. Each little scene had to be tested. And he worked back and forth until when that play opened, he knew he could attract 3 or 4 levels of audience with that same play right there. He would fill the theater from top to bottom. And it was not a surprise because he tested it. He could see the reaction he was getting.
So it was all very strategically done.
Yeah, very
Interesting.
strategic.
I love your analogy that compares companies with the game rock, paper, and scissors. And it seems like in today's market, the new direct-to-consumer, right, and the niche brands are the scissors companies. So what do paper companies do now to be able to position themselves? Because it seems to be quite difficult when you have a lot of these fresh brands coming up, and some of the paper companies almost feel like they're stagnating a bit. What would you recommend?
Yeah, so the concept is that in the game rock, paper, scissors, paper, rock, whatever, however you call it, everyone can win. Anyone can win. So scissors cuts paper and wins. Paper covers rock and wins, or rock breaks scissors and wins, and they can all lose too. That's finally the way I understood how all these different kind of companies can coexist in the same market. Because it seems like to me, if you're big, you would just squash everybody. You'd have a monopoly, and that would be that.
Right.
Of course, we have laws against that, but that's what every company really wants, is they want a monopoly.
Right.
As far as they can get away with it. They want to be the only choice. My feeling is the brand should be the reason that you're the only choice. But so scissors companies are sharp, and they cut little pieces out of paper. Paper companies are these really big companies, slow moving but very big. They cover the waterfront, and they can take any number of little companies who are snipping little pieces of their market away from the edges. It doesn't hurt them at all. They don't even notice. They can't compete with those little companies because there's not enough revenues in it to make a difference for the size of company they are. So they just tolerate that. If a scissors company is successful in a niche, they create some little product that nobody else makes or do something differently, they'll grow. They'll start to grow, and they'll grow into a rock company. Now, a rock company is a bigger company that has momentum. That's the main thing. They have the speed. They're really starting to take off. The danger to them is the scissors companies are right in back of them. They used to be a scissors company, and they would like to smash those other ones that are nipping at their heels.
Right.
So they use their momentum to crush them or buy them or whatever, or just, stomp on them in some way. And the paper companies have a lot to fear from those companies because they're on their way to becoming big competitors, and they've got momentum and profit margins like you wouldn't believe. What they try to do is smother these companies coming up, these rock companies, with their size. They cover it with like paper covers a rock. Okay, so then you get to your point was, okay, when you're a paper company, the danger there is you just get snipped at to death with from these little companies, or you get attacked from a rock company with momentum. So you've got to fight back. Typically, they don't fight back against the little companies, just the ones who are on their way to being competitors. But they've been around so long that they can't do anything new. It just, there's no money in it. So they typically buy up rock companies and sometimes scissor companies. They just buy them. They can't create them. They don't seem to have that skill anymore. And so they do stagnate. And there's a question as to whether that's okay. Maybe once you get to big company, you just try to maintain it. What's wrong with that? You're making money. You're solid. You're not going anywhere. Maybe there's no growth left to have for you unless you start whole new brands. So I think that's what's happening in the larger companies. Instead of just buying companies, which never fully works out, it's always a win-lose situation when you buy another company. Why don't we learn how to organically grow new businesses, protect them against getting crushed, and don't expect to make a lot of money from them in the beginning. This is a long-term investment. So you start little companies, you shelter them from being crushed. You don't starve them for funds because you've got a product that needs more investment, and who cares about the little ones? It's like raising a family. You've got these little babies that you have, and you don't give a baby up just because it can't hold a job. You raise it, you take care of it, and eventually maybe it becomes a rock company. It's tough being a really big company. I just think it's like Apple is at that stage. I think, how much more growth can they have? It seems to be like they're slowing down. It may be a management thing, but maybe it's just that, no, they're mature and they're moving slower, but they're really solid. And it's hard to know. But for companies that want to stay fresh and stay alive, if they're really big, I would say they need to look to organic growth. They need to have little nurseries where they're these little brands up. and invest in those for the long term, and don't expect huge revenues out of those. Look for energy and excitement and high profit margins.
So in other words, these larger companies should either be developing smaller brands over a long period of time or acquiring other small brands, but instead of merging them into the big parent company, keep them as individual small brands, letting them run independently. But you're providing that sort of nursery, so to speak.
Funding them and giving them protection, then deciding at a later time, do we elevate this and invest more in it? Just the same way a venture capitalist would. If they run across somebody who looks interesting, promising, probably a person, team that has an idea, they'll say, this is good. Why don't, if I give you $1,000, would you just write up a quick back of the napkin business plan or come up with some ideas? Yeah, we can do that. And if they come back and that looks good, they say, look, if I give you $10,000, can you make a prototype of this or somehow demonstrate, have a little experiment to see if this can work? Okay, we can do that. Hey, the experiment worked. What if we give you $100,000 to take this into a little test? Hey, that test worked good. So here's 10 million and let's start really building this out. So they just do it little by little. Large companies can do the same thing. They could be venture capitalists.
Yeah, so follow that venture capitalist model to be able to create that stable or that nursery of brands, some of which you may be able to develop into your next big brand, and others you may spin off or sell to somebody else or do whatever.
Yeah, and it's not just the companies themselves, it's the people in the companies that you can have access to because they may be brilliant at something else in the company, or you're creating relationships while you do this, and you're seeing where the talent is, the real talent.
Right.
It's all about that in business. Who's got the right stuff to lead a company?
That's interesting because you could also be fostering a talent pool that could be brought into you. Yeah, very interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah, so talent is important.
Oh, absolutely. So tell me about your Level C program. That really sounds exciting, and I think that it seems like a perfect opportunity for executives who want to sharpen their brand skills.
It is. When we started to think about what's keeping brand from really being understood, there's a gap in education. There aren't a lot of really good brand leadership courses at universities where you might go to get a business education. In fact, there's no place you can go to get a really good, thorough course that's grounded in real experience, right? There's some sort of theoretical things, but the whole thing with branding is it's not just strategy, it's execution. And you can fail in execution really easily. So you have to have those two things working together. So in fact, that was the name of my first book, is The Brand Gap. It's the gulf between strategy and execution.
Right.
It has to be closed up. So in that gap, everyone falls, including business people, and designers don't understand business very well as a rule. That's where we position this company to teach people mastery of branding up through 5 levels.
Wow.
And at the top level, it starts out with just a holistic view of what branding is, modern branding, because it's much bigger than people think. It's much more interesting than people think. That lets you see where you fit in this whole model and what's required of you. And the next course is Certified Brand Strategist, and that's where you just learn strategy, differentiation, positioning, disruption, these sorts of things. You start to understand how that's done. The third one is brand architecture, so becoming a brand architect. That involves managing multiple brands, like in the same way that a conductor manages an orchestra, right? You have all these different, it's more like a jazz orchestra. It's not classical music. It's live. It's happening in the moment. And you have to make all those brands fit together and make the whole portfolio adds up to something unified and powerful. That's a full-time job right there doing that.
Exactly.
So those are the 3 basic talents, and then there are 3 basic levels. And then the next level is teaching that stuff. What we believe is that if you teach something, you learn it much better, and you're able to talk about it on your feet in any group of people because you've been doing it, right, with students. It's just second nature, and it gives you a lot of authority whenever you're talking about branding, whenever you're leading branding, because you do it so well you can teach it. And then the final level at the top is the CBO level. That's where we train people to be chief brand officers, because our vision for the future is that companies will need more Steve Jobses, either as CEOs, but probably more CBOs working side by side with CEOs to manage the whole customer community, the whole customer experience.
Wow.
And that doesn't exist now. So there's nobody looking out for customers.
That's interesting. Yeah, you're right. There is really, you have chiefs of so many other areas, but you're right. There is no CBO, no chief brand officer, which is quite surprising considering how important branding is and how most companies feel very much like they have a brand, they're proud of their brand. But you're right, it hasn't been given a C-suite position.
Yeah, and that's what has to happen. That's why I'm grateful for Steve Jobs because he showed the way. He was the CEO of Apple, but I don't think he had much to do with shareholders or he wasn't poring over spreadsheets every weekend. He was thinking about customers and what would just knock their socks off. Like, how do we do that? How can we achieve greatness with our customers? What do they need that they can't even see they need? How do we get everybody working on it? How do we make it the most beautiful, perfect execution of these ideas that's possible so no one can even touch us? Those are the concerns of branding.
Right, and he did it masterfully.
Yeah, he had to stamp his feet once in a while, but he got what he wanted. Nothing's easy. Even if you're the leader of a company, you still have to fight with people. You have to fight for budgets and your point of view and everything. And he was taking them on at a time when the deck was definitely stacked against innovators and designers.
Oh, absolutely.
So now we've got his example.
Yeah, he ended up getting kicked out of his own company.
He was 30 when he got kicked out.
Was he really only 30?
He was only 30. So I think his time in the desert with his Unix-based servers and stuff really was a growing period for him where he wasn't in the spotlight and he actually had to produce something grown up.
Right.
And then he got involved with Pixar, which was all about showmanship and perfect storytelling and that sort of thing. And so when he came back with those skills, he hit the ground running. And he had done so much to develop the Apple tribe, the Apple community, that they were waiting for him when he came back. They were still there. And so he had this standing army that he could command. It was pretty magnificent. So I think we're just lucky to have that as an example, even though it's by far the most outstanding one. We're seeing lots of other emulators of that. We're seeing people with vision are doing really right now. And when things are changing, when it's a time of enormous tumultuous change, visionary people are in their element.
Absolutely.
But, like you say, you have to be strategic. And so brand's all about connecting strategy with customers, right?
Exactly.
It's those two things together.
I think what you said is exactly right. You have to start with the customer. And that oftentimes doesn't happen. And especially when you have an existing company that's been around a long time, you feel more nervous about rocking the boat. I think when you're a startup, you've got nothing to lose. You have nothing, so you have nothing to lose. It's harder for an existing company.
That's right. It's very true. And that's just human nature also. I would suspect that most companies that got big in the last century got lucky in the beginning. The timing was right. They created something maybe accidentally that took off and they followed their nose. It became really big. When they ran into problems was trying to duplicate that success. And they were never as successful as they were the first time.
Right.
Because it was luck. It was total luck. They didn't have the framework or the skills to be able to do that at will.
Right.
And so I think that's what branding gives you, is this ability to create new products, new companies, new business models at will, because you have a process along with your genius. You have this way of doing it. And if your whole company is using that same framework, it makes it much easier than if you're just a lone reed saying, no, follow me.
Right.
Team, and they go, where are you going? Where are you taking us? Nobody wants to go. So you really need a whole company that's on the same page. And that's what leadership is now. It's like leading the whole brand building team. And that includes customers.
I think that, as you said, right now we have a lot of disruption going on. And so it's an opportunity that oftentimes in stable times is harder to do. But right now, because everything has been turned on its head, Pandemic has certainly caused a lot of chaos. It's caused people to have to rethink a lot of different things. So this could be the big opportunity for many companies, the cover that they need to be able to make that change.
Yeah, the pandemic has shaken the snow globe.
Right. That's a good way to put it.
It's all going to fall in different places. All the snow is going to fall in different places. Get in there and use the opportunity to do something new. You probably will. Minds will be open to it now. So, but I think branding in general has a very rosy future. I think it's just going to be better and better understood in the next 10, 20, 30 years. And I'm happy to be helping people understand it through Level C. It's been really thrilling to see so many people, so many talented people that bring their skills to this. And all they need is an understanding of where to apply those skills. And suddenly their careers take off. We saw that from the very first class that we put out. So we're going to see a lot of growth in this area, I hope.
Now, I know with Level C, it had been a rotating kind of a program where it was a traveling program where you would go to different destinations, different years, and hold the course. And now with the pandemic, it's very difficult to be able to travel and hold live courses. Have you taken that into an online setting for the time being?
Yes, we're totally online now, but we still believe in doing live classes where people can rub shoulders and meet each other in person, breathe the same air safely,
right?
Go out for drinks after class and get to know each other and form bonds with each other. It works really good in person. So but doing it online has really opened our minds to it. And we knew we would do it eventually, but it was actually quite easy once we figured out how to do it. We had to change a few things, but we found out we could reach more people in more spots of the world, and we got the same kind of enthusiastic response as we did in our live classes. Everyone says they still want to meet in person.
Right.
So I think from now on, we'll be just doing both. And we have a understanding with people, if they take one of our online classes, because it's all that was possible for them, they can show up at any of the classes they've already taken. They can show up to the live versions, take the class just for fun, for free, to hang out with everybody and get a tune-up to their skills, hang out with everybody at dinner and all that. And it'll always be there for them. All this kind of learning takes repetition. It takes being part of a group of people, sharing ideas. All that stuff is part of it. And it's become this kind of learning community where everybody's sharing their ideas, forming little alliances with each other where they can work together sometimes. Yeah,
I think that's important. It's a mastermind group. And I think the fact that you open it up to when you do have live classes, that people who've taken the online can come and be part of that group and really brainstorm with other people, that's really outstanding. I think that's a tremendous value. So how do people find out about Level C? Is there a website dedicated to it?
There's a website. Yeah, you can see what the dates are coming up and everything, and you can find out about the classes. It's levelc, levelc.org.
Okay.
Not .com, but org. We're an organization.
So levelc.org.
Yeah, that's right. Or they can follow me or link up with me on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much for sharing this, Marty. Really, I could just sit here and talk to you for hours, but you've got things to do, and I wouldn't be so bold as to take up all your time. But your books are always a joy to read and full of insights. At least for anyone, that's a good starting point, is to at least get a copy of one of your books. I know they're on Amazon, so it's very easy to access no matter where you are in the world. Starting with a book, and then, of course, if you have the opportunity to take Level C, that's got to be just a blessing for anybody who has an interest in branding.
Everyone is welcome as long as they're already professionals.
So thank you very much. I really appreciate your taking the time.
Okay, Jane, so nice to catch up with you, and talk soon.
If you enjoyed this episode of A Seat at the Table, join us again next week when I'll be sitting down with Susan Gans, CEO of Lion Brothers, a 120-year-old company that's leading the way forward in the fast-growing imagewear market. And make sure to visit Spin Expo. From trend information to technical innovation, Spin Expo is the primary exhibition for yarns and knitwear. The fair provides well-edited forums featuring high-quality products that are bursting with creativity. To learn more, go to spinexpo.com. That's spinexpo.com. You can also find a link in the show notes for this episode. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Jane Singer, and I'll see you in the next episode.